The warning lights flashed red across the command bridge of the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Glory. Admiral Vexthal's 4 eyes focused on the main display screen as his clawed hands gripped the metal armrests of his command chair. The massive alien looked like a cross between a lizard and a bear, with dark green scales covering his 7-foot frame. His breathing made a low rumbling sound as he studied the readings. "Report," he growled in his native language, which the translation device converted to standard galactic speech. Commander Zekrin, his second-in-command, moved quickly to the Admiral's side. Her smaller frame and lighter green coloring marked her as younger, but her movements showed years of military training. "Admiral, our long-range sensors have detected a single vessel approaching the Kethvar system. It appears to be of human origin." Admiral Vexthal's inner eyelids blinked rapidly, a sign of confusion among his species. He had been expecting this moment for weeks. The humans had been expanding their territory, taking control of 3 star systems in less than 2 years. The mining rights dispute over the Helix Nebula had pushed both sides to the edge of war. Intelligence reports suggested the humans were preparing a massive fleet to challenge Zephyrian control of this border region. A single vessel? Vexthal's voice carried disbelief. "Our intelligence indicated they were massing ships. Where is their fleet?" "Sir, our sensors show only one ship. It's approximately 800 meters long, standard human design. No other vessels detected within 3 light-years of this position." The Admiral stood from his chair, his full height making him tower over the crew. Around him, the bridge of the Eternal Glory buzzed with activity. Nearly 200 crew members worked at various stations, monitoring the fleet of 200 warships that made up Battle Group 7, the most powerful force the Zephyrian Empire had ever assembled in this sector. "This makes no sense," Vexthal muttered. "Surely they know our strength here. Our spy networks confirmed they are aware of our presence." Commander Zekrin pulled up additional data on her personal display. "Admiral, the human vessel is broadcasting on standard diplomatic frequencies. They are requesting permission to enter our space for peaceful negotiations." "Peaceful negotiations?" Vexthal's laugh sounded like rocks grinding together. "They send one ship against our entire battle group and speak of peace? This is either supreme arrogance or supreme stupidity." The communication officer, a thin Zephyrian, with bright yellow markings on his neck, turned toward the Admiral. "Sir, the human ship is requesting direct communication with the fleet commander." Admiral Vexthal looked around his bridge. Every crew member had stopped their work to listen. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a blade. These were veteran warriors who had fought in dozens of battles across the Empire's expanding borders. They understood warfare, tactics, and strategy. But this situation made no sense to any of them. "Put them through," Vexthal ordered. The main screen changed to show a human woman sitting in what appeared to be the bridge of their ship. She had dark skin and black hair pulled back in a simple style. Her uniform was clean and professional, with small metal insignia that marked her rank. Most surprising to the Zephyrian crew was her expression of calm confidence. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth ship Defiance," the human said. Her voice was steady and clear. "I'm requesting permission to enter Zephyrian space to discuss the current situation in the Helix Nebula region." Admiral Vexthal studied the human carefully. He had seen pictures of humans before, but this was his first direct communication with one. They were smaller than Zephyrians, with soft skin and only 2 eyes. Yet something about this particular human's manner made him feel uneasy. "I am Admiral Vexthal, commander of the 7th Battle Group of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy," he replied. "Captain Vasquez, surely you are aware that you are approaching a heavily defended system with significant military presence." "Yes, Admiral. Our sensors detected your fleet. Quite impressive. 200 ships if our readings are correct." The casual way she mentioned their numbers surprised Vexthal. Most species would be intimidated by such a show of force. This human spoke as if she were commenting on the weather. "Then you understand that entering this system with hostile intent would be extremely unwise," Vexthal said. Captain Vasquez smiled slightly. "Admiral, I can assure you that the Defiance has no hostile intentions. We're here to discuss peaceful resolution to our current disagreement. Peaceful resolution? Vexthal's voice rose. Your species has taken control of 3 star systems that rightfully belong to the Empire. You have ignored our diplomatic protest and expanded your territory without permission, and now you send a single ship to negotiate? Yes, sir. 1 ship is all that's needed for diplomatic talks. Commander, Zekrin leaned closer to her admiral. Sir, this has to be some kind of trick. Perhaps their ship carries a massive weapon. Or maybe it's a distraction while their real fleet approaches from another direction. Vexthal nodded but kept his eyes on the human captain. Captain Vasquez, I find it difficult to believe that your government would send only 1 ship to resolve such an important matter. Where is the rest of your fleet? This is our fleet, Admiral. The Defiance and her crew of 200 are fully authorized to speak for Earth and our allied colonies in this matter. The bridge fell silent. Even the background hum of machinery seemed quieter as the crew processed what they had heard. A single ship with 200 crew members was considered a small escort vessel by Zephyrian standards. Their own flagship carried over 3,000 warriors. Captain Vasquez, Vexthal said slowly, I want to make sure I understand your position. You are telling me that 1 human ship is prepared to negotiate with the entire 7th Battle Group? That's correct, Admiral. And you believe 1 ship is sufficient for this task? I do. Admiral Vexthal felt his anger rising. Among his people, such behavior would be seen as a direct insult. It implied that the enemy considered you so weak that minimal force was needed to deal with you. He had spent his entire career building a reputation as a fierce warrior. The idea that these soft-skinned humans thought so little of his strength made his blood boil. Captain Vasquez, I strongly suggest you contact your superiors and request proper military support. The matters we need to discuss are far too important for such a small delegation. Admiral, I appreciate your concern, but I have full authority to negotiate on behalf of humanity. The Defiance represents our commitment to finding a peaceful solution. Your commitment? Vexthal's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. Captain, let me be clear about something. This system is under the protection of 200 of the Empire's most advanced warships. Each of my vessels carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon. My crew members are veteran warriors who have never known defeat. And you think your single ship represents an appropriate response to this situation? Captain Vasquez remained completely calm. Admiral, I think our single ship represents exactly what this situation requires. Nothing more, nothing less. The words hit Admiral Vexthal like a physical blow. The human wasn't just refusing to acknowledge his superior force, she was suggesting that his entire battle group was exactly equal in value to her 1 small ship. The insult was so profound that several bridge officers made angry hissing sounds. Captain Vasquez, Vexthal said through clenched teeth, you have exactly 1 hour to contact your government and request appropriate military support. If you do not have a proper fleet here within 24 hours, I will consider your presence an act of aggression and respond accordingly. Admiral, I understand your position, but I'm afraid that won't be possible. The Defiance is the only ship coming to this system. We're prepared to begin negotiations whenever it's convenient for you. Commander Zekrin stepped forward. Admiral, perhaps we should simply destroy their ship now and send a message to their government about the consequences of such disrespect. But Vexthal held up a hand to stop her. Something about the human captain's complete lack of fear bothered him more than open threats would have. In his experience, beings who showed no fear either had good reason for their confidence, or they were completely insane. He needed to figure out which category this human fell into. Captain Vasquez, help me understand your thinking. You must know that we could destroy your ship in a matter of minutes. You must know that your government has no way to protect you at this distance from human space. So why do you seem so confident? Admiral, I'm confident because I believe both of our peoples want to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. The Defiance is here to find a solution that works for everyone. But what if we simply decide to attack your ship right now? Captain Vasquez considered the question seriously. Then you would attack our ship, Admiral. But I don't think that's what you really want to do. And why is that? Because you're not a mindless killer, Admiral Vexthal. You're a professional, military officer. You understand the difference between necessary force and senseless violence. Destroying a diplomatic vessel would gain you nothing and cost you much. The bridge crew exchanged glances. This human had just analyzed their admiral's character in a few simple sentences, and her assessment was uncomfortably accurate. Vexthal prided himself on being a warrior, not a butcher. You seem very sure about what kind of person I am, Captain. I've studied your military record, Admiral. Your victories have always been clean and professional. You fight hard, but you don't kill unnecessarily. That tells me you're someone who can be reasoned with. Admiral Vexthal found himself in an uncomfortable position. The human had just complimented him while simultaneously refusing to show proper respect for his superior force. It was like being praised and insulted at the same time. Captain Vasquez, your confidence in my character is noted. However, the fact remains that you are in violation of Imperial space with insufficient force to back up your position. This is not how diplomacy works. Admiral, with respect, this is exactly how diplomacy works. We talk. We find common ground. We reach agreements that benefit both sides. Military force is only needed when diplomacy fails. And what makes you think diplomacy won't fail here? Because both of our species are intelligent enough to recognize when cooperation serves us better than conflict. The communication fell, silent for several long moments. Admiral Vexthal stared at the human captain, trying to understand what he was dealing with. In his 40 years of military service, he had never encountered anything like this situation. Finally, he spoke. Captain Vasquez, I'm going to give you 24 hours to reconsider your position. Use that time to contact your government and explain the reality of your situation. I will not make this offer again. I appreciate the time, Admiral, but my position won't change. The Defiance is here to negotiate, and we're ready whenever you are. Admiral Vexthal ended the communication and turned to face his bridge crew. Every eye was focused on him, waiting for orders. He could see the confusion and anger in their faces. They wanted action, but he wasn't sure what action to take. Sir, Commander Zekrin said quietly, what are your orders? Maintain current position and alert status. Double our sensor sweeps and watch for any sign of additional human ships. They have to be hiding somewhere. And if they're not, sir? What if this really is just one ship? Admiral Vexthal was quiet for a long moment, staring at the tactical display that showed his massive fleet surrounding one small human vessel. Then, Commander, we're dealing with a species that's either much stupider or much more dangerous than our intelligence reports indicated. As the bridge crew returned to their duties, Admiral Vexthal couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. The human captain's complete lack of fear suggested knowledge that he didn't possess. But what could one small ship know that would make it confident enough to face an entire battle group? Outside the flagship, the Defiance continued its steady approach toward the heart of the Zephyrian fleet, broadcasting peaceful intentions and requesting permission to begin diplomatic talks. To the watching aliens, it looked like the smallest fish in the ocean swimming directly toward the largest pack of sharks, completely unaware of the danger. But Admiral Vexthal was beginning to suspect that the human ship knew exactly what it was doing. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours of the first communication between Admiral Vexthal and Captain Vasquez, intelligence networks from dozens of species were buzzing with activity. The Hive Cluster, a collective consciousness of insectoid beings, devoted 3 entire thought streams to analyzing the situation. The crystalline architects assigned their best probability calculators to determine what the humans were really planning. On the bridge of the Hive Cluster vessel Unity of Purpose, Sub-Queen Zaketh's compound eyes focused on multiple data streams simultaneously. Her 6 arms moved in complex patterns as she processed information from thousands of drones scattered across nearby systems. This makes no computational sense, she clicked to her advisory council. Humans do not engage in suicide missions for diplomatic purposes. Their psychological profiles indicate strong self-preservation instincts. Senior drone Veklit tilted his triangular head. Perhaps the single ship is equipped with a weapon of unprecedented power. Our analysis of human technology suggests they favor efficiency over size. Negative, Zakth replied. Our sensors would detect any weapon capable of threatening a fleet of that magnitude. The human vessel shows standard energy signatures for a ship of its class. Meanwhile, aboard the architect vessel Geometric Harmony, Prime Calculator Resonance of Truth worked through hundreds of scenarios. The crystalline being's body pulsed with soft blue light as complex mathematical equations flowed through its consciousness. The probability of human victory with current force deployment is 0.0001%, Resonance of Truth announced to the assembled collective. Therefore, this cannot be their actual strategy. Secondary calculator. Pattern of insight flickered with curiosity. Then what is their true purpose? Distraction? Misdirection? Most likely explanation. The visible ship is a decoy. The actual human fleet is positioned beyond our sensor range, possibly utilizing stealth technology we have not yet encountered. Back in the Kethvar system, Admiral Vexthal found himself dealing with more than just the mysterious human ship. Communication requests flooded in from allies, neutral parties, and even a few species that were technically enemies, but curious about the developing situation. Admiral, the communications officer reported, we are receiving inquiries from the Hegemony Council, the Free Traders Alliance, and even the Void Stalkers. Everyone wants to know what's happening here. Vexthal rubbed his scaled forehead with one massive hand. Tell them we have the situation under control and require no assistance. Commander Zekrin approached with a datapad. Sir, our intelligence division has been monitoring communications across the sector. The consensus seems to be that this is some form of human psychological warfare. Psychological warfare? Vexthal considered the idea. Explain. Several analysts believe the humans are trying to make us overreact. By sending only one ship, they're forcing us to either look weak by negotiating or look like bullies by attacking a vastly inferior force. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. That would be clever. What else? Others think the humans are buying time, that this single ship is meant to delay us while they position their real forces. On the human ship Defiance, Captain Vasquez was having her own conference with her senior staff. The ship's conference room was smaller than a Zephyrian storage closet, but the 5 officers present represented some of Earth's finest military minds. Captain, said Commander James Park, her first officer, we're detecting massive communication traffic throughout the sector. It seems like everyone is trying to figure out what we're doing here. Chief Engineer Sarah Chen looked up from her tablet. The power signatures from the Zephyrian fleet are impressive, but nothing our shields can't handle. If we need to leave quickly, we can. We're not leaving, Captain Vasquez replied firmly. We came here to negotiate, and that's what we're going to do. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos, the ship's tactical officer, frowned. Captain, with respect, the aliens seem to think we're either insane or planning something devious. Maybe we should clarify our intentions. I've been very clear about our intentions, Maria. We're here to find a peaceful solution to the Helix Nebula dispute. But they don't understand why we only sent one ship, Commander Park pointed out. Captain, Vasquez leaned back in her chair. That's because they're thinking like warriors instead of diplomats. They see strength in numbers, we see strength in restraint. I'm not sure they understand the difference, Captain. Then we'll teach them. The next few hours brought a series of increasingly confused communications from various alien species. The Zephyrians received formal inquiries about the human threat level. Several merchant guilds wanted to know if trade routes would be affected. 2 species offered military assistance against the human invasion force. Admiral Vexthal found himself in the uncomfortable position of explaining that there was no invasion force, just one ship that wanted to talk. Admiral Vexthal, came a transmission from Fleet Admiral Korthak of the Imperial Home Fleet. High Command is concerned about reports of human fleet movements in your sector. What is your assessment of their strength? Vexthal stared at the communication screen showing his superior's image. Admiral Korthak was even larger than Vexthal, with battle scars covering his neck and arms. He was not known for his patience. Sir, we have confirmed the presence of one human vessel. No additional ships have been detected. One vessel? Korthak's voice carried disbelief. Our intelligence suggested a major human offensive. Sir, that's what we expected as well. But they have sent only a single ship with a diplomatic mission. Admiral, Vexthal, either human intelligence is far superior to ours or you're missing something obvious. No species sends one ship against a battle group without good reason. Understood, sir. We're maintaining full alert status and continuing sensor sweeps. Find their real fleet, Admiral, and when you do, destroy it before they can cause trouble elsewhere. The transmission ended, leaving Vexthal staring at a blank screen. He was beginning to feel like the humans had somehow turned his own success against him. His battle group was the pride of the Imperial Navy, but now it felt like an embarrassment. How could he explain to High Command that 200 warships were being held in place by a single enemy vessel? On the bridge of Unity of Purpose, Sub-Queen Zacht was reaching different conclusions. Analysis update. Human behavior suggests extreme confidence in their position. This confidence must be based on superior intelligence or superior technology. Or superior strategy, added Senior Drone Veklet. Elaborate. Consider, they achieve maximum attention with minimum resources. Every species in the sector is now focused on this system. If their goal is to create uncertainty and confusion among their enemies, they have succeeded perfectly. Zacht's compound eyes shifted patterns as she processed this idea. Interesting hypothesis. But what advantage does confusion provide? Unclear. We may be witnessing a form of warfare we do not yet understand. Back on the Defiance, Captain Vasquez requested another communication with Admiral Vexthal. The Zephyrian fleet commander appeared on screen looking more frustrated than before. Captain Vasquez, I hope you're calling to inform me that additional human ships are on their way. No, Admiral. I'm calling to begin our negotiations. We've been in your system for 6 hours now, and I'd like to start discussing the Helix Nebula situation. Vexthal's inner eyelids fluttered rapidly. Captain, I cannot begin formal negotiations until you explain your military situation. Where is your fleet? Admiral, this is our fleet. The Defiance represents humanity's commitment to peaceful resolution of this dispute. One ship is not a fleet, Captain. Why not? The simple question caught Vexthal off guard. Because fleets consist of multiple vessels. That's the definition of a fleet. Admiral, we prefer to think of it as quality over quantity. The Defiance may be one ship, but she's the right ship for this mission. Captain Vasquez, you cannot seriously expect me to believe that your government considers one ship sufficient to resolve a territorial dispute involving multiple star systems. Admiral, I don't expect you to believe anything. I expect you to listen to our proposal and judge it on its merits. Commander Zekrin, who had been listening to the exchange, stepped closer to her admiral. Sir, perhaps we should simply demand they leave our space. This conversation is going nowhere. But Vexthal held up a hand. Something about the human captain's responses bothered him. She answered every question directly, but her answers only led to more questions. Captain Vasquez, help me understand something. Your species has a reputation for aggressive expansion. You've taken control of 3 star systems in less than 2 years. That doesn't sound like the behavior of peaceful negotiators. Admiral, we've established colonies in 3 uninhabited systems. There's a difference between expansion and invasion. The Empire has prior claims to those systems. The Empire has filed territorial claims, yes, but filing a claim and actually using the territory are different things. We found empty systems and made them productive. Those systems fall within our sphere of influence. So does this system, Admiral, but you haven't built any colonies here either. Vexthal felt his anger rising again. The human was technically correct, but her logic felt like an attack on everything the Empire stood for. Captain, the Empire reserves the right to develop its territories according to its own timeline. Of course, Admiral. Just as humanity reserves the right to develop uninhabited territories according to our timeline. Those territories are not uninhabited if we have claimed them. Admiral, with respect, claiming a star system and using a star system are not the same thing. We didn't take anything from you, we just got there first. The bridge crew of the Eternal Glory listened to this exchange with growing frustration. Their admiral was being outmaneuvered by a human who spoke in circles while somehow always sounding reasonable. Captain Vasquez, Vexthal said slowly, Are you telling me that your government's position is that uninhabited systems belong to whoever settles them first? That's one way to look at it, Admiral. Another way is to say that systems belong to whoever can make productive use of them. And what if multiple species can make productive use of the same system? Then we negotiate, Admiral. We talk. We find solutions that work for everyone. And if negotiations fail? Captain Vasquez was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice carried a different tone. Then we deal with that situation when it happens, Admiral. But I prefer to believe that intelligent species can find peaceful solutions to their problems. Admiral Vexthal ended the communication and turned to face his bridge crew. The confusion in their expressions matched his own feelings perfectly. "Sir," Commander Zekrin said carefully, "I don't think the humans are trying to deceive us. I think they genuinely believe that one ship is sufficient for this situation. But that's impossible, Commander. No species thinks that way." "Maybe humans do, sir." The idea that humans might actually think differently from every other known species was more disturbing to Vexthal than the possibility that they were lying. If humans genuinely saw no problem with sending one ship against an entire battle group, what did that say about their understanding of warfare? What did it say about their understanding of reality? "Commander, double our sensor sweeps again. Expand the search pattern to include areas where stealth ships might hide. I want to know if there are any human vessels within 10 light years of this position." "Yes, sir." As Commander Zekrin moved to carry out his orders, Admiral Vexthal stared at the tactical display showing the positions of all ships in the system. 200 green dots representing his fleet surrounded one red dot representing the human ship. It should have been a simple situation. Instead, it was becoming the most confusing assignment of his career. Across the galaxy, intelligence analysts continued working through the night, trying to understand what the humans were really planning. The consensus was that this had to be some form of advanced strategy that other species hadn't encountered before. None of them considered the possibility that the humans were doing exactly what they said they were doing, sending one ship to negotiate a peaceful solution to a territorial dispute. The idea was so simple, so straightforward, that it never occurred to anyone that it might actually be true. And that misunderstanding was about to make the situation much more complicated. Admiral Vexthal stood in his private quarters, staring out at the stars through the large viewing port. 18 hours had passed since the human ship arrived, and he was no closer to understanding their strategy. His sleep cycle had been disrupted by constant reports from sensor operators who found nothing, intelligence officers who had no new intelligence, and communication specialists who could only repeat the same confusing messages from Captain Vasquez. Soft chime indicated someone requesting entry to his quarters. "Come," he called out without turning around. Commander Zekrin entered and moved to stand beside her admiral. She was younger than him by almost 20 years, but her tactical mind was sharp. More importantly, she often saw things from angles that escaped his more traditional thinking. "Sir, I've been reviewing our sensor data from the past day. No additional human ships detected anywhere in the surrounding systems. They have to be there somewhere, Commander." "What if they're not, sir?" Vexthal finally turned to face her. "Explain." "Sir, what if the humans really did send only one ship? What if they genuinely believe that diplomatic negotiations require only diplomatic personnel?" "That would be naive to the point of insanity, Commander." "Would it, sir? Or would it be something else entirely?" Vexthal studied his second-in-command carefully. Zekrin had a habit of thinking through problems in ways that sometimes made him uncomfortable. "What are you suggesting?" "Sir, I've been studying the humans' responses to our communications. Every time we mention our superior numbers, she acknowledges them without any sign of concern. Every time we point out her vulnerability, she agrees but doesn't change her position. Either she's completely detached from reality, or she knows something we don't. Such as the possibility that her single ship is somehow equivalent to our entire fleet." Admiral Vexthal felt a chill run down his spine. "Commander, that's impossible. We've scanned their vessel thoroughly. It's a standard human design with nothing unusual about its size, power output, or weapon systems." "Then perhaps the difference isn't in their technology, sir." "What do you mean?" Commander Zekrin hesitated before answering. Sir, what if the difference is in their thinking? What if humans understand something about warfare that we don't? The idea was disturbing enough that Vexthal remained silent for several minutes. In his experience, warfare was about strength, numbers, and superior firepower. The side with more ships and bigger weapons won. It was a simple, reliable principle that had served the Empire well for centuries. Commander, I want you to design a test. Sir, if the humans know something we don't, we need to find out what it is. Design a scenario that will force them to reveal their true capabilities. What kind of scenario, Admiral? Send a squadron to escort their ship. Make it clear that we're evaluating their threat level. If they're hiding something, they'll either reveal it or call for backup. Commander Zekrin nodded. How aggressive should our escort be, sir? Aggressive enough to make them uncomfortable, but not so aggressive that we can be accused of attacking a diplomatic vessel. Understood, sir. 2 hours later, 12 Zephyrian warships broke formation from the main fleet and moved toward the Defiance. Each ship was 3 times the size of the human vessel and carried enough firepower to reduce a small asteroid to dust. Their approach was coordinated and professional, but their intent was clear. On the bridge of the Defiance, Lieutenant Commander Santos looked up from her tactical display. Captain, we have 12 Zephyrian ships approaching. They're broadcasting a message requesting permission to provide escort services. Captain Vasquez smiled slightly. How thoughtful of them. Open a channel. The main screen showed the bridge of the lead Zephyrian vessel. A mid-level officer with the rank insignia of a squadron commander appeared on screen. His name was Tekvar, and his service record showed 15 years of combat experience. Captain Vasquez, I am Squadron Commander Tekvar. Admiral Vexthal has assigned my ships to escort your vessel during your stay in our system. Thank you. Commander, that's very considerate. We appreciate the gesture. Tekvar had expected protests, demands, or at least questions about the necessity of such an escort. The human's gracious acceptance caught him off guard. Captain, my ships will be conducting routine security sweeps while we escort you. This may require close proximity maneuvers. Of course, Commander. Please let us know if you need any assistance with navigation or coordination. Assistance? Tekvar's confusion was visible on his scaled features. Well, Commander, we've been operating in this system for almost a day now. Our navigation computers have detailed information about local gravitational anomalies, solar wind patterns, and optimal flight paths. If sharing that data would help your ships operate more efficiently, we're happy to provide it. Commander Tekvar looked at something off-screen, presumably getting guidance from his own bridge crew. When he turned back to the camera, his expression was even more confused. Captain, that won't be necessary. My ships are fully capable of handling routine escort duties. I'm sure they are, Commander. I was just offering to help. Cooperation makes everything easier. The communication ended, leaving Tekvar staring at a blank screen. His tactical officer, a veteran named Greltok, leaned over from his station. Sir, how should we interpret the human's response? I have no idea, Greltok. She offered to help us escort her own ship. Perhaps it's a form of psychological manipulation. Or perhaps she genuinely meant to be helpful. Sir, that makes no sense in this context. Commander Tekvar had to agree. Nothing about the human captain's behavior made sense in any military context he understood. Over the next few hours, the Zephyrian escort squadron conducted increasingly aggressive maneuvers around the Defiance. They performed high-speed passes, activated targeting scanners, and established weapon locks on the human vessel. Each action was technically within the bounds of escort duties, but the intent was clearly provocative. The human response to each escalation was the same: professional acknowledgement followed by helpful suggestions. When the Zephyrians performed high-speed passes, Captain Vasquez complimented their piloting skills and suggested minor course corrections that would improve fuel efficiency. When they activated targeting scanners, she thanked them for the security check and offered to provide detailed schematics of her ship's systems to help them complete their scans more quickly. When they established weapon locks, she politely pointed out that their targeting computers might be malfunctioning and offered to share diagnostic software that could help. them troubleshoot the problem. Captain, Commander Tekvar finally transmitted after his fourth attempt to provoke a reaction. Are you aware that my ships have established targeting locks on your vessel? Yes, Commander. We detected the locks immediately. Is there a problem? With your targeting systems, we've noticed some fluctuation in the lock frequencies that might indicate calibration issues. Our targeting systems are functioning perfectly, Captain. Oh, good. Then you're just practicing target acquisition exercises. That's smart thinking, Commander. Regular training keeps crews sharp. Commander Tekvar ended the communication and turned to his bridge crew. Does anyone have any idea what's happening here? His weapons officer, a young female named Sektra, raised one clawed hand. Sir, perhaps the humans don't understand what weapon locks mean. They detected them immediately and identified frequency fluctuations, Sektra. They understand our technology perfectly. Then perhaps they don't see weapon locks as threatening. The idea sent a chill through every member of the bridge crew. Among Zephyrians, establishing a weapon lock on another ship was one step short of actually firing. It was a clear threat that demanded an immediate response. The idea that another species might not see it as threatening suggested either ignorance or supreme confidence. Sir, the communication officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Vexthal. The Admiral's image appeared on the command screen. Commander Tekvar, what is your assessment of the human vessel? Sir, I honestly don't know how to categorize them. They respond to every aggressive action with helpful suggestions and friendly cooperation. Are they afraid? No, sir. They show no signs of fear or stress. If anything, they seem genuinely pleased to have our company. Have they revealed any hidden capabilities? No, sir. Their responses have been purely communicative. No defensive measures, no countermaneuvers, no calls for backup. Admiral Vexthal was quiet for a long moment. Commander, I want you to escalate your testing. Make them uncomfortable enough that they have to respond with something other than helpful suggestions. How far should I escalate, Admiral? As far as necessary, but stay within the technical bounds of escort duties. Understood, sir. What followed was the most aggressive escort mission in Zephyrian military history. Commander Tekvar's ships surrounded the Defiant so closely that their shield bubbles almost touched. They synchronized their weapon locks to create a constant targeting pattern. They flooded the human ship with sensor sweeps so intensive that most species would consider them acts of aggression. Captain Vasquez's response was to invite Commander Tekvar and his senior officers aboard the Defiance for dinner. Captain, Tekvar transmitted, did you just invite us to dine on your ship? I did, Commander. You and your crews have been working very hard to keep us safe. The least we can do is offer you a good meal. Captain, we are not keeping you safe. We are conducting security evaluations. Of course, Commander, and we appreciate how thorough you're being. A proper security evaluation requires a lot of hard work. That's why we'd like to show our gratitude. Commander Tekvar looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They stared back at him with expressions that ranged from confusion to something approaching panic. Captain, I don't think you understand the nature of our current relationship. Commander, I think I understand it perfectly. You're doing your job, and we're doing ours. There's no reason we can't be civilized about it. The word civilized hit the Zephyrian crew like a physical blow. It was exactly the kind of thing a superior species might say to primitives who didn't understand proper behavior. Sir, his tactical officer whispered, I think the humans are trying to tell us something. What kind of something, Greltok? I think they're trying to tell us that they're not worried about our weapons because our weapons don't worry them. Commander Tekvar stared at the human ship on his display screen. It looked exactly like what it was supposed to be. A mid-sized diplomatic vessel with standard defensive capabilities. But if Greltok was right, then its appearance was completely misleading. Open a channel, he ordered. Captain Vasquez appeared on screen, still smiling with that same expression of calm confidence. Commander, have you thought about our dinner? Invitation? Captain Vasquez, I need to ask you a direct question. Of course, Commander. Are you afraid of my ships? Captain Vasquez considered the question seriously. Commander, your ships are very impressive, and I have a great deal of respect for their capabilities. But no, I'm not afraid of them. Why not? Because there's no reason to be afraid, Commander. We're not enemies. We're just people trying to figure out how to get along. But Captain, my ships could destroy your vessel. Yes, Commander, they could. Just like our ship could destroy your ships. But neither of us wants to do that, so why dwell on it? The communication ended abruptly as Commander Thekvar cut the transmission. He turned to face his bridge crew and saw his own shock reflected in their faces. She said their ship could destroy our ships, he said quietly. Sir, Greltok replied, either she's lying or we've been testing something much more dangerous than we realized. Commander Thekvar looked at the human ship on his tactical display. It still looked like a simple diplomatic vessel. But Captain Vasquez had spoken about its destructive capabilities the same way she talked about sharing navigation data, as if it were a simple, obvious fact. All ships, he transmitted to his squadron, maintain current positions but stand down to yellow alert. And someone get me a direct channel to Admiral Vexthal. He needs to hear about this immediately. As the Zephyrian squadron pulled back, to a more respectful distance, the crew of the Defiance continued their routine duties. To them, the entire episode had been exactly what it appeared to be, a security escort that had gotten a bit carried away with its thoroughness. Captain Vasquez returned to her ready room to continue preparing for negotiations that she hoped would begin soon. She had no idea that her simple, honest responses had just convinced an entire squadron of alien warriors that humanity possessed weapons technology beyond their comprehension. The test had revealed something about human capabilities, but it wasn't what Admiral Vexthal had expected to find. Admiral Vexthal listened to Commander Thekvar's report with growing unease. The human captain's casual mention of her ship's destructive capabilities had shaken his experienced squadron commander, and that worried him more than any direct threat would have. Admiral, Thekvar concluded his transmission, I recommend we reassess our understanding of human military technology. The captain spoke about destroying our ships the same way she talked about sharing navigation data. Thank you, Commander. Maintain your escort position but avoid further provocations until we understand what we're dealing with. Vexthal ended the communication and called for his senior staff to meet in the main briefing room. Within minutes, his top officers had assembled around the large holographic display table that dominated the center of the room. Gentlemen, Vexthal began, we have a problem. The human vessel may represent a significantly greater threat than our initial assessment indicated. Commander Zekrin leaned forward. Sir, are you saying they do have superior weapons? I'm saying we don't know what they have, Commander, and that ignorance is becoming dangerous. The ship's chief intelligence officer, a thin Zephyrian named Mortek, activated his personal data pad. Admiral, I've been analyzing all available information about human military capabilities. Their expansion into 3 star systems was accomplished with relatively small fleets. This suggests either superior technology or superior strategy. Or both, added the chief tactical officer. The question, Vexthal said, is whether we're looking at a diplomatic vessel that happens to be well armed, or a warship disguised as a diplomatic vessel. Sir, Commander Zekrin said carefully, there's a third possibility. Which is? That it really is just a diplomatic vessel, and the humans genuinely don't see our fleet as a threat. The briefing room fell silent. The idea that any species could look at 200 warships and not feel threatened was so foreign to Zephyrian thinking that it was difficult to process. Commander, Mortek said slowly, if that's true, then humans either have defensive capabilities we can't imagine, or they're completely insane. Or, Zekrin replied, they understand something about warfare that we don't. Before Admiral Vexthal could respond, alarm klaxons began sounding throughout the ship. The bridge communication officer's voice came over the intercom. Admiral, to the bridge immediately. We have unknown contacts engaging civilian vessels in the outer system. Vexthal and his officers rushed to the bridge to find controlled chaos. Multiple display screens showed tactical information, as sensor operators tracked fast-moving contacts near the system's edge. Report, Vexthal ordered. Sir, the tactical officer replied. 16 unknown vessels have attacked a civilian convoy near the 4th planet. Configuration suggests Keth-Varian pirates. Admiral Vexthal cursed under his breath. The Keth-Varian pirates were a constant problem in this region, but they usually avoided systems with heavy military presence. The fact that they were bold enough to attack with an entire battle group in system suggested either desperation or stupidity. "Sir," Commander Zekrin reported, "the convoy consists of 7 merchant vessels from various species. They're broadcasting distress calls. Distance to contact? 47 minutes at maximum speed, sir." Vexthal considered his options. The pirates had chosen their timing well. His fleet was positioned to monitor the human ship, not to respond to threats at the system's edge. He could dispatch part of his force, but that would mean reducing his watch on the humans during a critical moment. "Sir," the communication officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." Captain Vasquez appeared on the main screen, but her expression was different now. The casual friendliness was gone, replaced by focused intensity. "Admiral Vexthal, we're detecting the attack on the civilian convoy. The Defiance is moving to assist." "Captain, that's not necessary. We have the situation under control." "Admiral, with respect, you have 12 ships positioned around us and the rest of your fleet is 47 minutes away from the attack site. We can be there in 12 minutes. Vexthal felt his confusion returning. "Captain, we appreciate your offer, but this is an internal matter for the Empire to handle. Admiral, those are civilian ships under attack. This isn't about politics or territories. This is about people who need help." Before Vexthal could respond, his tactical officer called out urgently, "Sir, the human ship is accelerating. They're moving directly toward the battle site." On the tactical display, the red dot representing the Defiance was indeed moving away from the Zephyrian fleet at an impressive speed. More concerning was what happened to Commander Thekvar's escort squadron. "Admiral," came Thekvar's voice, over the communication system, "the human ship just left. We were maintaining escort formation and suddenly they accelerated past us like we were standing still." "Pursue them, Commander." "Sir, we're trying, but they're pulling away from us. Our engines can't match their acceleration." Admiral Vexthal stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The Defiance had just outrun 12 of the Empire's fastest ships without apparent effort. Either human technology was far more advanced than intelligence reports indicated, or the ship had been concealing its true capabilities all along. "All ships," he ordered. "Maximum speed toward the attack site. We cannot allow the humans to engage. Enemy forces without support." But even as his fleet began moving, Vexthal could see that they would arrive too late. The human ship would reach the battle long before any Zephyrian vessel could provide assistance. 12 minutes later, the Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the battle zone. What Admiral Vexthal and his crew saw, through their long-range sensors, changed their understanding of warfare forever. The pirate ships were mid-sized raiders, each armed with enough firepower to threaten a merchant vessel, but not enough to fight a proper warship. 16 of them had surrounded the 7-ship convoy and were systematically destroying the merchant's defensive systems before moving in for the kill. The Defiance arrived like a force of nature. The first thing the watching Zephyrians noticed was that the human ship didn't slow down. Instead of dropping to sublight speeds and approaching cautiously, it translated directly into the middle of the battle at full speed. The pirates' formations, which had been carefully positioned to trap the convoy, suddenly found themselves scattered by a vessel moving faster than their targeting computers could track. The second thing they noticed was the humans' defensive systems. Pirate weapons that could punch through merchant shields and armor barely registered against the Defiance. Energy beams that should have caused significant damage simply dissipated harmlessly against some form of protection that Zephyrian sensors couldn't identify. But it was the human weapons that truly amazed the watching aliens. The Defiance didn't use conventional energy weapons or projectile systems. Instead, it fired something that looked like controlled gravitational distortions. Space itself seemed to bend around the pirate ships as these weapons struck them. Hulls that should have exploded simply stopped working. Engines that should have detonated just went dark. Weapons that should have overloaded quietly shut down. "By the gods," whispered Commander Zekrin.
They're not destroying the pirates, they're disabling them. Admiral Vexthal watched in fascination as the human ship systematically neutralized the entire pirate fleet without killing anyone. Each
shot was precisely targeted to disable specific systems rather than cause catastrophic damage. When pirates attempted to flee, the Defiant simply made their engines stop working. When they tried to self-destruct rather than be captured, the human weapons somehow prevented the detonations. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "the human ship has disabled all 16 pirate vessels. Total engagement time, 4 minutes and 37 seconds. But the humans weren't finished. Even as Admiral Vexithal's fleet finally arrived at the battle site, the Defiance was already coordinating rescue operations. The ship deployed small shuttles that began moving between the damaged merchant vessels, providing medical aid and emergency repairs. "Admiral," came Captain Vasquez's voice over the communication system, "we have the situation stabilized. The pirate vessels are disabled but intact. The merchant ships have casualties that need medical attention. We're providing what assistance we can, but some of them need facilities we don't have." "Captain," Vexthal replied, his voice barely steady, How did you do that?" "Do what, Admiral?" "Disable 16 ships in less than 5 minutes without destroying them." "Standard non-lethal engagement protocols, Admiral. We try not to kill people unless absolutely necessary." "Non-lethal? Captain, those weapons you used, we've never seen anything like them." "They're just gravitational field manipulators, Admiral. Nothing fancy. They disrupt matter cohesion in targeted areas without causing explosive decomposition." Admiral Vexthal felt like he was listening to someone describe impossible magic as if it were simple engineering. Gravitational field manipulation was theoretical science for the Empire. The humans spoke about it like routine technology. "Captain," he said carefully, "would you be willing to transfer the injured merchants to our medical facilities?" "Of course, Admiral. That would be very helpful. Our medical bay is good, but yours are probably better equipped for multiple casualties." Over the next hour, Admiral Vexthal watched human and Zephyrian crews work together to rescue survivors and secure the disabled pirate vessels. The humans coordinated the entire operation with calm efficiency, treating it as a routine emergency response rather than a military victory. Captain Vasquez herself supervised the transfer of wounded merchants to Zephyrian medical ships, working alongside alien doctors, as if she'd been doing it all her life. She asked intelligent questions about Zephyrian medical procedures and offered suggestions based on human emergency medicine. "Admiral," Commander Zekrin said quietly, "I need to point something out." "What is it, Commander?" "Sir, the human ship could have done that to us. Everything they did to the pirates, disabling our systems, neutralizing our weapons, stopping our engines, they could have done that to our entire fleet." The realization hit Admiral Vexthal like a physical blow. For the past 2 days, he had been threatening a ship that could have disabled his entire battle group without breaking stride. The humans hadn't been confident because they were naive. They had been confident because they were completely, utterly, overwhelmingly superior. "Sir," the communication officer reported, "Captain Vasquez is requesting permission to speak with you privately." "Put her through." Captain Vasquez appeared, on screen, once again wearing that expression of calm professionalism. But now Admiral Vexithal understood what he was looking at. This wasn't the face of someone who was naive about military power. This was the face of someone who possessed so much power that she could afford to be gentle with those who had less. "Admiral," she said, "I wanted to thank you for allowing us to assist with the rescue operation. Your medical teams did excellent work." "Captain," Vexthal replied, "I think we need to talk." "I've been hoping we could do that, Admiral. I believe we have a lot to discuss." "Yes," Admiral Vexthal said, looking around his bridge at the faces of his crew. "I believe we do." For the first time since the human ship had arrived, he was beginning to understand what kind of species he was dealing with. And for the first time in his military career, Admiral Vexthal felt something he had never experienced before when facing an enemy: genuine respect. The humans hadn't sent one ship because they were arrogant or stupid. They had sent one ship because one ship was enough. Not just enough to defend themselves, but enough to help others, enough to show restraint, and enough to demonstrate that true strength sometimes meant choosing not to use the power you possessed. The revelation was humbling in a way that no military defeat could have been. The formal meeting took place aboard the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Glory, in Admiral Vexthal's private conference room. Captain Vasquez arrived with only 2 companions, her first officer, Commander Park, and her chief diplomatic advisor, Dr. May Elizabeth Chen. The room itself was designed to intimidate, with high ceilings, dark metal walls, and display screens showing the positions of the entire Zephyrian fleet. Admiral Vexthal had chosen his attendees carefully. Commander Zekrin for her tactical insights, Intelligence Chief Mortek for his analytical mind, and his diplomatic advisor, an elderly Zephyrian named Kolthek, who had spent 40 years negotiating with various alien species. Captain Vasquez, Admiral Vexthal began, before we discuss territorial matters, I need to understand something about your ship's capabilities. Of course, Admiral. What would you like to know? How long has humanity possessed gravitational manipulation technology? Captain Vasquez exchanged a glance with Dr. Chen before answering. Admiral, we've been using basic gravitational field generators for about 30 years. The weapons you saw today are a more recent development, maybe 10 years old. And how many human ships carry such weapons? All of them, Admiral. Standard equipment on everything from patrol boats to exploration vessels. The silence that followed. This statement was profound. Admiral Vexthal had been hoping that the Defiance was some form of experimental prototype or elite vessel. The idea that every human ship possessed technology that outclassed his entire fleet was difficult to process. Captain, Commander Zekrin said carefully, if all human ships possess such advanced capabilities, why did your species allow territorial disputes to develop? You could have simply taken what you wanted. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Commander, that's exactly why we didn't take what we wanted. Having the ability to do something doesn't mean you should do it. I don't understand, admitted Intelligence Chief Mortek. Captain Vasquez smiled slightly. Chief, let me ask you a question. If you had the ability to take food from a child, would you do it? Of course not. But what does that have to do with territorial expansion? Everything, Dr. Chen replied. Humanity learned a long time ago that power without restraint leads to disaster. We could take any system we wanted, but that would make us conquerors, not neighbors. Admiral Vexthal felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place in his mind. You're saying that your species chooses to limit its own expansion? We choose to expand responsibly, Admiral. There's a difference between taking what you can and taking what you need. But the 3 systems you colonized were claimed by the Empire. They were claimed, Admiral, but they weren't being used. We needed places to establish new colonies for our growing population. Rather than take inhabited systems by force, we found empty ones and made them productive. Diplomat Kolthek spoke for the first time. Captain, you must understand that the Empire's territorial claims are based on long-term strategic planning. We may not develop a system immediately, but that doesn't mean we don't intend to use it eventually. We understand that, sir, Commander Park replied. But we also believe that empty systems should be put to good use rather than held indefinitely for future development. And what happens when the Empire is ready to develop those systems? Admiral Vexthal asked. Then we negotiate, Admiral, Captain Vasquez replied. We find solutions that work for everyone. And if negotiation fails, then we find better ways to negotiate. The answer frustrated Admiral Vexthal because it wasn't really an answer at all. Captain, what I'm asking is, what happens if 2 species both want the same system and cannot reach agreement? Dr. Chen leaned back in her chair. Admiral, in our experience, that situation is usually based on a false assumption. Which assumption? The assumption that there's only one solution. In 30 years of expansion, humanity has never encountered a resource dispute that couldn't be solved through creative thinking and good faith negotiation. That seems unlikely, Mortek observed. It seems unlikely because most species approach negotiations as competitions rather than problem-solving exercises, Dr. Chen replied. They focus on winning rather than finding solutions that benefit everyone. Commander Zekrin leaned forward with interest. Can you give us an example? Certainly, Captain Vasquez said. 5 years ago, we had a dispute with the hegemony over a system that contained rare minerals needed for advanced electronics. Both species wanted exclusive access to the deposits. How was it resolved? Admiral Vexthal asked. We built a joint mining operation. Humanity provided transportation and refining technology. The hegemony provided extraction expertise and security. Both species got the minerals they needed. Plus, we both learned new techniques from working together. And both sides were satisfied. With this arrangement, both sides were more than satisfied, Admiral. The joint operation produces twice as much output as either species could have achieved alone. Plus, the collaboration led to other beneficial partnerships. Admiral Vexthal struggled to understand how such an arrangement could work. But, Captain, what prevents one side from simply taking control of the entire operation once it's established? The same thing that prevents us from taking control of your territory, Admiral. We don't want to be the kind of species that breaks agreements and betrays partners, even if you could gain significant advantages by doing so. Especially then, Admiral. Short-term advantages gained through betrayal always lead to long-term problems. Other species stop trusting you. Partnerships become impossible. Eventually, you end up isolated and surrounded by enemies. Dr. Chen nodded. Humanity learned this lesson the hard way, Admiral. We spent centuries fighting wars over resources and territory. Eventually, we realized that cooperation was more profitable than conquest. More profitable how? Mortek asked. When you conquer a species, you get their resources but lose their knowledge and skills. When you partner with them, you get access to their resources plus you learn from their expertise. Partnership creates value. Conquest just redistributes it. Admiral Vexthal found himself thinking about the rescue operation he had witnessed. The humans could have ignored the pirate attack, or they could have destroyed the pirates completely. Instead, they had chosen a third option: disable the threat while preserving life and coordinating rescue efforts. Captain, he said slowly, when your ship engaged the pirates, you could have destroyed them all in seconds. Why didn't you? Because destroying them wasn't necessary, Admiral. Our goal was to stop the attack and protect the civilians. Once we accomplished that goal, there was no reason to keep fighting. But those pirates will likely escape custody and attack other civilians in the future. Not necessarily, Admiral. We captured their ships intact, which means we have access to their navigation computers, communication logs, and personnel records. Intelligence gathered from this incident will help local authorities shut down their entire operation. Commander Zekrin looked thoughtful. So by preserving the pirates' lives and ships, you gained more intelligence than you would have by destroying them. Exactly, Commander. Plus, some of those pirates might be willing to provide information in exchange for reduced sentences, and some might even be convinced to change their ways entirely. You believe pirates can be reformed? Admiral Vexthal asked skeptically. Some can, Admiral. People become pirates for different reasons. Some are just criminals, but others are desperate people who don't see alternatives. If you give them better options, some of them will take those options. Dr. Chen added, humanity has found that rehabilitation is more effective than punishment for reducing future crime. It's also more cost-effective in the long run. The conversation continued for several more hours, covering topics from resource allocation to conflict resolution, to the philosophical basis of interspecies cooperation. With each exchange, Admiral Vexthal found his understanding of humanity evolving. These weren't naive idealists who didn't understand power. They were pragmatists who had learned to use power more effectively than any species he had encountered. They didn't avoid conflict because they were weak. They avoided conflict because they had found better ways to achieve their goals. Finally, as the formal session was ending, Admiral Vexthal asked the question that had been bothering him most. Captain Vasquez, I need to understand something. Why did you really send only one ship? The truth, please. Captain Vasquez was quiet for a moment, clearly considering her answer carefully. Admiral, we sent one ship because that's what the situation required. If we had sent 100 ships, what message would that have conveyed? That humanity takes territorial disputes seriously, or that humanity solves problems through overwhelming force rather than intelligent discussion, that we're conquerors rather than neighbors. But you risked having your ship destroyed or captured. Did we, Admiral? Captain Vasquez's question was gentle but pointed. You've seen what the Defiance can do. You know that we could have disabled your entire fleet if we had wanted to. Were we really at risk? The question hung in the air as Admiral Vexthal considered the implications. The humans hadn't sent one ship because they were weak or naive. They had sent one ship because they were so confident in their capabilities that they could afford to appear vulnerable. It was the ultimate expression of strength, the ability to show restraint while possessing overwhelming power. Admiral, Captain Vasquez continued, we could have arrived in this system with a fleet large enough to intimidate you into submission. We could have taken the disputed systems by force. We could have established ourselves as the dominant power in this region through military superiority. Why didn't you? Because none of those approaches would have solved the real problem, Admiral. They would have just created new problems. We don't want to be your conquerors. We want to be your neighbors. And neighbors resolve their disputes through conversation, not violence. Admiral Vexthal looked around the conference table at his officers. He could see that they were struggling with the same conceptual adjustments that he was experiencing. Everything they had been taught about warfare and diplomacy was being turned upside down. Captain, he said finally, I think I'm beginning to understand your position, but I need to ask, what happens if we can't reach agreement on the territorial issues? Then we keep talking, Admiral. We try different approaches. We bring in mediators if necessary. We look for creative solutions that we haven't thought of yet. And if all of that fails? Captain Vasquez smiled. Admiral, it's been my experience that when intelligent beings approach a problem with genuine goodwill, they can always find a solution. The trick is making sure both sides actually want to solve the problem rather than just win the argument. 3 days later, Admiral Vexthal found himself signing the most unusual peace treaty in Zephyrian military history. The agreement established joint human-Zephyrian development of the disputed systems, with both species contributing resources and expertise to colonial efforts. It created trade partnerships that benefited both economies. It even established cultural exchange programs and joint research initiatives. Most importantly, it formally recognized humanity as a neighboring power rather than an invading force. The treaty acknowledged that the galaxy was large enough for multiple species to thrive without competing for every available resource. As Captain Vasquez prepared to depart the Kethvar system, Admiral Vexthal requested one final private communication. Captain, he said, I want to thank you for teaching us something important. What's that, Admiral? That true strength isn't about having the power to destroy your enemies. It's about having the wisdom to turn your enemies into allies. Captain Vasquez smiled. Admiral, I think you're going to find that humanity and the Zephyrian Empire have a very productive future together. As the Defiance departed the system, word of the peaceful resolution spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Other species, who had been watching the situation with great interest, began to reconsider their own assumptions about humanity. The humans hadn't sent one ship because they were arrogant or foolish. They had sent one ship because they understood something that other species were just beginning to learn. That the most dangerous beings in the universe were often those who chose not to demonstrate their full power unless absolutely necessary. And sometimes the greatest victory was convincing your enemies that they didn't need to be your enemies at all. The galaxy was changing, one conversation at a time. The message came without warning, a series of pulses and mathematical sequences that interrupted all radio broadcasts across Earth. Scientists worked for 3 days straight to understand it. On the 4th day, they knew. Aliens were coming to visit. Commander Alan Reeves stood at the observation deck of Space Station Liberty, watching the stars. At 42, with salt and pepper hair and steady hands, he had been chosen to represent humanity. His 20 years in the Navy made him the obvious choice, they said. Alan wasn't so sure. Sir, they'll be here in 10 minutes, said Lieutenant Laura Mills, appearing at his side. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her uniform pressed perfectly. As the world's top exolinguist, She had developed the translation software they hoped would work. Alan nodded. Are we ready? Laura's smile didn't reach her eyes. As ready as we'll ever be for first contact with an alien civilization, the Zalthori ship appeared without warning. No entry flash, no visible engines. One moment empty space, the next a sleek vessel twice the size of Liberty hovered outside the docking bay. Its surface shimmered like oil on water, changing colors. As it moved. Showtime, Alan whispered. The delegation consisted of 3 aliens. The leader, who called himself Ambassador Zykarn, stood 7 feet tall with iridescent scales covering his slender body. 2 four-fingered hands emerged from flowing robes, and a crest of feather-like appendages crowned his oval head. We bring greetings from the Zalthori Imperium. The translator converted his whistling speech. A coalition of 7 species spanning 200 star systems. Alan bowed slightly. Earth welcomes you. I am Commander Reeves, and this is Lieutenant Mills. Laura stepped forward with a device. This will help us communicate better, may I? The alien hesitated, then nodded. Laura attached the device to the ambassador's robes, adjusting settings on her tablet. Much better, Zykarn said, his actual voice harmonizing with the translation. We have observed your transmissions for some time. Your development has been remarkable. For 3 days they talked. The Zalthori shared stories of their vast empire, their technological achievements, their peaceful trading partnerships. They asked endless questions about Earth's history, about human biology, about the colonies on Mars and Europa. But something wasn't right. On the second night, Laura knocked on Alan's quarters. Her face was pale. Commander, I've been reviewing the translation logs, and there's a problem. Alan let her in, closing the door. What kind of problem? When they talk about their territory and borders, the translation gets fuzzy, like they're being deliberately vague. Laura showed him her notes. And twice today, Ambassador Zykarn mentioned studying us for defensive purposes. Alan frowned. Maybe it's just translation error? Maybe. Laura didn't sound convinced. But there's more. When I mentioned our Neptune mining operations, his heart rate spiked. The biosensors picked it up. The next morning, Alan received a classified message from Admiral Grant at Earth Command. Unidentified vessels had been spotted near Neptune, observing the mining outposts from a distance. When confronted, they vanished. During that day's meeting, Alan carefully brought up the subject of territorial boundaries. We respect the sovereignty of all species, Zykarn said smoothly. The Imperium believes in peaceful coexistence. And where exactly does Imperium territory begin? Alan asked. We're expanding our mining operations, and wouldn't want to intrude. Something flickered in the alien's large, faceted eyes. Your solar system is unclaimed, for now. That evening, the Zalthori announced they needed to return to their ship for a rest cycle. They promised to continue talks the next day. They never returned. Alan was awakened at 3 a.m. by alarms. Laura rushed into the command center seconds after. Her hair loose around her shoulders. They've left, the station controller reported. No communication, no warning. Their ship just disappeared. Get me Earth Command, Alan ordered. Admiral Grant's face appeared on screen, grim. Commander, we just received a message from the Zalthori vessel before it jumped to faster than light speed. They said they would return soon to continue discussions. I don't like this, Admiral. Neither do I. We're putting all outposts on high alert. 3 days passed. Alan and Laura remained on Liberty, analyzing every word of their meetings, searching for clues. Laura's translation software had recorded everything, and they played it back repeatedly, looking for hidden meanings. They were assessing us, Laura concluded. Our technology, our weapons, our defenses. But why? Alan wondered. If they have 200 star systems, what threat could we possibly pose? The answer came at 600 hours on the 4th day. All communication with the Neptune outpost ceased. The emergency beacon activated for 3 minutes, then went silent. The long-range telescopes showed flashes of light near the outpost. Weapons fire. 1 hour later, a message arrived on all channels, in perfect English. To the species known as humans, Your rapid technological advancement and aggressive expansion has been deemed a future threat to the security of the Zalthori Imperium. Your military capabilities and biological adaptability present an unacceptable risk. The Imperium Council has voted unanimously to neutralize this threat before it matures. This communication serves as a formal declaration of war. Resistance is inadvisable but expected. The message ended with a set of coordinates, the Neptune outpost. Live feed from a rescue ship showed the facility torn apart, floating in pieces. No survivors. In the emergency meeting that followed, Laura's face was stone. They decided to eliminate us before we learned enough to threaten them. Admiral Grant appeared on the main screen addressing all Earth military forces. As of this moment, we are at war with an alien species. All civilian evacuations from outer colonies will begin immediately. All military personnel are now on active duty. Alan looked out at the stars, thinking of the Zalthori ambassador's parting words. Your species has accomplished in centuries what took others millennia. Impressive, but concerning. They think they know what humans are capable of, Alan said, quietly. They have no idea. Within hours, reports came in of Zalthori ships appearing near Mars. The first battle for humanity's survival had begun. On Earth, factories converted to weapons production. Scientists worked around the clock studying the limited data they had on Zalthori technology. Military reserves were called up. For the first time in history, all nations united against a common enemy. As Laura and Alan boarded the shuttle back to Earth, she looked at the stars one last time. They came looking for a threat and found none, she said. So they decided to create one instead. Alan nodded. And that will be their biggest mistake. 6 months had passed since the Zalthori declared war on humanity. 6 months of retreat, loss, and desperate fighting. The outer colonies were gone. Mars was under constant attack. Earth prepared for the worst. Dr. Eric Daniels hadn't slept properly in days. His lab, buried 300 feet beneath the Rocky Mountains, hummed with activity even at 3 a.m. Screens displayed equations and simulations while tired scientists worked in shifts. Try it again, Eric told his team, running a hand through his messy brown hair. At 35, he had already been one of Earth's top physicists before the war. Now he was humanity's best hope. The simulation ran, numbers flashed, a virtual Zalthori weapon fired at a shield. This time, the shield held for 6 seconds before failing. Progress, muttered Eric, though 6 seconds wouldn't save anyone in a real battle. He studied the energy patterns, noticing something he'd missed before. Wait, look at the frequency pattern when their weapon hits our shield. His assistant, Dr. Lily Wong, leaned closer. There's a pulse. Every 2.3 seconds. Exactly. They're not firing continuously. It's pulsed energy. Eric's fingers flew across the keyboard. If we time our shields to strengthen precisely when those pulses hit, the next simulation showed the shield holding for 15 seconds. Not enough, Eric said. But we're getting there. In space, the USS Defiant hid in the shadow of Europa's ice moon. Captain Samantha Payne watched the scanner, holding her breath, as a Zalthori patrol ship passed nearby. Hold position, she whispered, though she didn't need to. Her crew was experienced now, the 40 survivors of what had once been a crew of 100. The scanner showed the alien ship moving away. Samantha exhaled. Communications. Send the signal to the research station. We have 30 minutes to evacuate everyone before the next patrol. The Europa research station had been silent for weeks, pretending to be abandoned. In reality, 37 scientists remained working on understanding Zalthori technology from salvaged parts. Now they needed to leave before the aliens realized humans were still there. Landing team ready, reported Commander Rick Frost, her second in command. His face was gaunt, his eyes haunted. Like everyone else, he had lost friends in this war. Begin evacuation, Samantha ordered. And Rick, bring them all back this time. Rick nodded grimly and led his team to the shuttle bay. On Mars, Colonel Peter Wright crawled through the red dust, followed by 20 soldiers. They had survived the initial attack by hiding in the abandoned mining tunnels. For months they had watched the Zalthori build bases on Martian soil, gathering intelligence and occasionally sabotaging equipment. "Target in sight," whispered Sergeant Maria Garcia, pointing to a Zalthori supply convoy moving slowly across the desert. Peter checked his weapon. The modified pulse rifle had been created using parts from captured Zalthori guns. "Remember, aim for the neck joints in their armor. That's their weak spot." The team moved into position. Peter raised his hand, then dropped it. 20 rifles fired simultaneously. The convoy guards fell before they could sound an alarm. "Move in. Take everything useful. 5 minutes, then we're gone." His team worked quickly, grabbing food supplies, weapons, and most importantly, a communication device. They vanished back into the tunnels just as alarm bells began to sound from the nearby Zalthori base. Back in the tunnels, surrounded by 300 human survivors, Peter activated the stolen communication device. The Resistance had learned to tap into Zalthori transmissions, though understanding them was still difficult. A message came through, and the translation software struggled to keep up. "Grand General Kelvor demands progress report on human extermination efforts." Peter leaned closer as the response came. "Resistance stronger than anticipated. Human adaptability exceeds predictions. Request additional forces to complete cleansing protocol." The words chilled him. Cleansing protocol, not subjugation, not conquest. Extermination. At the Zalthori command ship orbiting Mars, Grand General Kelvor reviewed battle reports with growing frustration. His scaled hand crushed the data tablet. "How are they still fighting?" he demanded of his subordinates. "Their technology is primitive. Their weapons inferior. Their numbers limited." Commander Vexra bowed low. "They adapt quickly, Grand General. They have already incorporated elements of our technology into their defenses, and they refuse to surrender, even when defeat is certain. No species has ever continued fighting after losing 90% of their space forces," Kelvor said. "It defies logic." "Perhaps that is why the Council feared them," suggested Vexra. "Their unpredictability." Kelvor turned to the viewing screen, watching the red planet below. "Accelerate the timetable. Prepare for the final assault on Earth. I want this over in 3 months." On Europa, Rick's team worked quickly to evacuate the scientists. 16 minutes into the mission, alarms sounded. "Zalthori patrol returning early," warned Samantha over the radio. "You have 7 minutes before they're in range," Rick cursed. "Everyone on the shuttles now. Leave everything except the research data." The scientists scrambled aboard, clutching data drives and tablets. The last one was just boarding when the patrol ship appeared on the horizon. "They've spotted us," Rick reported. "Beginning emergency launch." The shuttles lifted off as energy beams sliced through Europa's thin atmosphere. One shuttle took a direct hit, exploding in a ball of fire. "Evasive maneuvers," Samantha ordered, as the Defiant moved from its hiding place to provide cover fire. "All weapons target that patrol ship." The Defiant's guns blazed, drawing the Zalthori's attention. The remaining shuttles raced toward the ship while it engaged the enemy. "Shuttle 2 has docked," reported the tactical officer. "Shuttle 1 is 30 seconds out." The Defiant shuddered as Zalthori weapons found their mark. Alarms blared throughout the ship. "Shields failing," someone called. "Hold position until that shuttle docks," Samantha ordered, gripping her chair as another blast hit them. The moment the final shuttle was secure, Samantha gave the order. "Jump to emergency coordinates, now." The Defiant vanished into faster than light. Speed just as the Zalthori ship fired again. They had escaped, but at a terrible cost. Half the evacuation team was gone, and the ship was badly damaged. In the medical bay, Samantha spoke with Dr. Julia Patel, the lead Europa researcher. "Was it worth it? Did you find anything that can help us?" Julia nodded, her eyes bright despite her exhaustion. "We discovered something incredible. The Zalthori weapons operate on very specific electromagnetic frequencies. If Dr. Daniels can use this data, we might be able to create shields that block them completely." For the first time in months, Samantha felt a glimmer of hope. On Earth, representatives from every nation gathered in the Emergency Planetary Defense Council. Admiral Grant stood before them, his face grim. "The outer colonies are lost." Mars is holding on by a thread. Our best estimates give us 3 months before the Zalthori reach Earth in force. He paused. But we are not defeated. Dr. Daniels has made breakthroughs in shield technology. Captain Payne has rescued key researchers from Europa with critical data. Colonel Wright's resistance on Mars continues to gather intelligence. He looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. Humanity has one advantage the Zalthori didn't count on. We have never, in our entire history, accepted extinction without a fight. And we're not about to start now. The council chamber erupted in determined applause. The fight for Earth, for humanity's very survival, was just beginning. 1 year into the war, Earth stood alone. The last orbital defense platform had just fallen, crashing into the Atlantic Ocean in a ball of fire. Zalthori ships now moved freely around the planet, preparing for their final assault. In his underground laboratory, Dr. Eric Daniels hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. The scientists rescued from Europa had joined his team, bringing crucial data about Zalthori technology. Together, they worked on humanity's last hope, Project Phoenix. "Hand me that circuit board," Eric said to Dr. Julia Patel, who had become his right hand. Dark circles framed her eyes, matching his own. "The energy conversion is still unstable," Julia warned as she passed him the component. "If we overload it, we don't have time for caution," Eric interrupted. "The Zalthori will begin their ground invasion any day now." The device on the table looked deceptively simple, a sphere about the size of a basketball, filled with intricate circuitry. If it worked, it would generate a shield using the Zalthori's own energy signatures against them. If it failed, humanity had no backup plan. Admiral Samantha Payne stood on the bridge of her new ship, the USS Defiance. After the loss of the Defiant, Earth had scraped together resources to build one final vessel, incorporating all they had learned about Zalthori technology. "Status report," she demanded. Her new second-in-command, Lieutenant Owen Kelly, responded promptly. "We're approaching the target. Zalthori scout ship is maintaining its patrol pattern. They haven't detected us yet." "Good. Prepare the boarding team." The plan was desperate, but they needed intelligence. Capturing a Zalthori ship might give them access to the aliens' battle plans, and perhaps a way to fight back. "Boarding team, ready," reported Owen. "Using the new cloaking suits." Samantha nodded. Another innovation born of necessity. The suits couldn't make a person completely invisible, but they disrupted Zalthori visual sensors enough to buy precious time. Begin operation. Commander Alan Reeves now worked from a bunker beneath what was once Washington, D.C. With most of the world's governments in disarray, he had been promoted to head of intelligence operations. His job was to find weaknesses in the enemy before it was too late. Laura Mills sat across from him, analyzing intercepted Zalthori communications. Her translation software had improved dramatically, allowing them to understand most of the alien messages. "Alan, look at this," she said suddenly, pointing to her screen. "This is a medical report from one of their ships." Alan leaned closer. "What am I looking at?" "They're reporting an outbreak of something called human contamination sickness. Several Zalthori soldiers who had direct contact with human prisoners are showing symptoms." Alan frowned. "We're making them sick?" "Not deliberately, but something about us, maybe a bacteria or virus we carry, affects them." Laura's eyes widened. This could be important. Alan immediately picked up a secure phone. "Get me Dr. Daniels, and find any biologists still alive. We may have just found a weakness." On Mars, Colonel Peter Wright's resistance had grown. Hundreds of human survivors had joined his group, living in an extensive network of tunnels and caves beneath the Martian surface. They had become experts at hit-and-run tactics, striking Zalthori bases and disappearing before reinforcements arrived. Today's target was special, a communications relay that connected the Zalthori forces on Mars to their fleet. "Everyone clear? On the plan?" Peter asked his team. 20 grim faces nodded back at him. "Remember, we need to capture the central terminal intact. That means precision strikes only." The team moved out, using the dust storm for cover. They had learned to work with Mars instead of against it. using the planet's harsh environment to their advantage. The Zalthori never expected an attack during a storm. Their first warning was when their perimeter guards stopped reporting in. By then, Peter's team was already inside the facility. "Control room secured," reported Sergeant Maria Garcia over the radio. "You need to see this, Colonel." Peter found Maria staring at a large screen filled with Zalthori text and symbols. "What is it?" "According to our translation software, these are orders for their final assault on Earth. It begins tomorrow." Peter felt his blood run cold. "Can we send a warning?" Maria nodded. "I think so. And there's more. Look at these troop movements. They're pulling forces from Mars for the attack. They're leaving their bases vulnerable." A plan began to form in Peter's mind. Send the warning to Earth, then send a message to all resistance cells on Mars. It's time we took back our planet. In orbit above Earth, Grand General Kelvor surveyed the blue planet with mounting frustration. A year of warfare against a technologically inferior species should have ended in quick victory. Instead, his forces had suffered loss after loss, despite their advantages. "The invasion forces are ready, Grand General," reported Commander Vexra. "All ships are in position." "Begin the attack," Kelvor ordered. "No more delays. I want this planet secured within 7 days." Across Earth's skies, Zalthori ships descended through the atmosphere. People watched in terror as the alien vessels took position above major cities. This was the moment humanity had feared since the war began. But in his underground lab, Eric Daniels smiled for the first time in months. "It's ready," he announced, holding up the completed device. "Project Phoenix is operational." Admiral Payne's voice came through on the emergency channel. "Dr. Daniels, our boarding operation was successful. We've captured their battle plans and a working ship. We're bringing it to you now." At the same time, Alan Reeves contacted the Emergency Council. "We've identified a biological weakness in the Zalthori. They're susceptible to a common human rhinovirus, a cold virus. We've already begun weaponizing it." From Mars, Peter writes, "Message arrived. Earth Command, Zalthori forces are being diverted from Mars for the Earth invasion. We're beginning a planet-wide counterattack. Hold on. Help is coming." As Zalthori ships began their attack, humanity enacted its desperate plan. From secret installations around the globe, Project Phoenix devices were activated. They created a web of energy that disrupted Zalthori weapons, causing many to fail or backfire. The captured Zalthori ship, piloted by Samantha Payne, led a small fleet of Earth vessels in a counterattack, using the aliens' own identification, codes to cause confusion among the invasion force. And throughout the Zalthori ground troops, a specially modified version of the human cold virus spread rapidly, causing debilitating symptoms that their medical technology couldn't address. For the first time since the war began, the Zalthori were forced to retreat. Several ships crashed while attempting to return to orbit. Others fled at maximum speed, abandoning ground forces. In his command ship, Grand General Kelvor received the unthinkable news. "Impossible," he whispered. "How could they have developed countermeasures so quickly?" Vexra had no answer. For the first time, doubt crept into the Zalthori High Command. They had started this war believing victory was inevitable. Now they weren't so sure. On Earth, cautious celebration began. They had won a battle, not the war. But for the first time, humanity dared to hope they might survive after all. "What now?" Julia asked Eric as they watched reports of the Zalthori. "Retreat." Eric's face hardened with determination. "Now we take the fight to them." 2 years had passed since the first Zalthori ship appeared near Earth. The war had changed. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting to win. Admiral Samantha Payne stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, looking at the red planet growing larger on the view screen. Mars, once home to thriving human colonies, now a battlefield. Behind her ship flew 50 vessels, a mix of rebuilt Earthships and captured Zalthori craft. The fleet humanity never thought they would have. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Owen Kelly, now promoted to captain. His young face had hardened during the past year, scars from a close call with Zalthori weapons marking his left cheek. "Begin the approach," Samantha ordered. "Remind all captains, we need to coordinate with Colonel Wright's ground forces. Timing is everything." The fleet moved toward Mars, weapons ready. This was not a sneak attack or a desperate raid. This was a full assault to reclaim what was lost. In his laboratory, now relocated to a renovated facility in what was once NORAD, Dr. Eric Daniels made final adjustments to his newest creation. Project Phoenix had saved Earth. His new project might win the war. "Engine test complete," reported Dr. Julia Patel, looking up from her monitors. "The drive is stable." Eric nodded, allowing himself a small smile. The device before them didn't look impressive, a metallic cylinder about the size of a car engine. But inside was something revolutionary, a faster-than-light drive based on Zalthori technology, but improved by human ingenuity. "How much faster than their ships?" asked General Frank Rivera, who had come to witness the test. 30% faster, Eric replied, "and it uses 40% less energy. Once we install these in our fleet, we can strike anywhere in their territory before they know we're coming." The general nodded approvingly. "How soon can we begin production?" "The prototype is ready now. We can start installing them in ships next week." For the first time in the war, humans would have the advantage of speed. Beneath the surface of Mars, Colonel Peter Wright gathered his forces. What had started as a small resistance was now an army of thousands. Every human survivor on Mars had joined the fight. "The fleet will arrive in 6 hours," he told his officers, pointing to a map of Zalthori bases. "Our job is to disable their defensive systems from the ground. Each team has its target. We strike simultaneously when Admiral Payne gives the signal." Sergeant Maria Garcia, now his second-in-command, spoke up. "Intel reports the Zalthori are in disarray. Their command structure is breaking down. They didn't expect us to last this long, let alone strike back." Peter nodded. "That's our advantage. They came to exterminate us. They never planned for a long war." He looked around at the determined faces. "Today we take back Mars. Tomorrow, we take the fight to their worlds." Commander Alan Reeves and Laura Mills worked in what was now called the Alien Intelligence Division. Their job was to understand the enemy, not just their language and technology, but their culture and psychology. Laura looked up from her console with excitement. "Alan, I've decoded a new set of transmissions. It's communication between Zalthori, military leaders, and their homeworld." Alan moved to her side. "What does it say?" "They're arguing among themselves. Several species within the Imperium want to withdraw from the war. They're saying the cost is too high." Alan's eyes widened. "The Imperium is fracturing?" Laura nodded. "It gets better. One faction is explicitly calling for peace talks with humans. They say the war was a mistake from the beginning. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for." Alan immediately sent a secure message to Earth Command. Perhaps they could end this war without further bloodshed. But first, they needed to speak with these potential allies. On a small uninhabited moon in a neutral star system, Alan met with a Zalthori who called himself Zivkor. Unlike the military leaders humans had encountered, Zivkor wore simple robes and had no visible weapons. "I speak for many within the Imperium who opposed this war," the alien said through a translator. "We warned the Council that attacking humans would be a mistake." "Why didn't they listen?" Alan asked. "Fear," Zivkor replied simply. "Our predictive models showed that if left alone, humans would surpass our technology within 3 centuries and potentially become the dominant species in this sector of the galaxy." "So they attacked us first?" "Yes. A preventative war. But now, many believe the attack itself has accelerated human development. You have adapted our technology and improved it in ways we never imagined." Alan couldn't argue with that. In 2 years, humans had advanced centuries. "We seek an alliance," Zivkor continued. "My faction will provide intelligence and support, if you agree to spare civilian populations when you strike Zalthori worlds." Alan studied the alien carefully. "How do I know this isn't a trap?" Zivkor produced a data crystal. These are the defense codes for every major Zalthori military installation. Proof of my sincerity. The battle for Mars began at dawn. As Admiral Payne's fleet engaged the Zalthori ships in orbit, Colonel Wright's forces emerged from their underground hiding places to attack key targets on the surface. The Zalthori were caught by surprise. Their defensive systems failed at critical moments, thanks to Peter's teams and the codes provided by Zivkor's faction. Human ships, now equipped with superior engines, outmaneuvered the enemy vessels. By nightfall, 3 major Zalthori bases had fallen. The aliens retreated to their final stronghold near Olympus Mons, the massive Martian volcano. They've requested terms, Samantha told Peter over a secure channel. They want to surrender. Peter's face hardened. After everything they've done, all the people they've killed? I understand your feelings, Samantha replied. But this is an opportunity. Their commander has valuable intelligence. The Zalthori commander was brought to a makeshift interrogation room. Grand General Kelvor looked diminished without his armor, his scales dull with stress and defeat. Why? Peter asked him directly. Why attack us? We were no threat to you. Kelvor's translator conveyed his bitter laugh. No threat? Our simulations showed humans would surpass and potentially conquer us within 3 centuries if left unchecked. The Council voted for preemptive action. So you tried to exterminate us because of what we might do someday? Yes. And now we see our error. The war itself has forced you to evolve faster than any species we've encountered. You've accomplished in 2 years what should have taken centuries. As Peter relayed this information to Earth Command, news arrived from Admiral Payne. Human ships had begun striking Zalthori outposts in nearby star systems. The war had moved beyond the solar system. On the Zalthori homeworld, the ruling council received the news with horror. The impossible had happened. Humans were bringing the fight to them. All remaining ships must return to defend Zalthoria Prime, declared the Supreme Counselor. We will make our final stand here. The Imperium, once spanning 200 star systems, now fought desperately to protect just one, their home. 3 years after first contact, humanity had achieved what the Zalthori thought impossible. Human ships now controlled dozens of star systems. Earth's defenses were stronger than ever. The hunters had become the hunted. Dr. Eric Daniels stood before the Emergency Council, now renamed the Earth Defense Authority. His newest creation lay on the table before them, a small black box with glowing blue lines across its surface. We call it the Nova Protocol, Eric explained, his voice steady, despite the gravity of his words. It can trigger an artificial supernova, destroying an entire star system. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Admiral Grant spoke first. You're talking about a weapon of mass destruction beyond anything in history. Eric nodded. Yes, but remember what the Zalthori planned for us, complete extinction. This gives us leverage to force their surrender. After heated debate, the council approved the weapon as a last resort only. Humanity would not become the monsters they fought against. Admiral Samantha Payne looked out from the bridge of the USS Defiance, now the flagship of the Earth Defense Fleet. Surrounding her were over 200 ships, a mix of Earth vessels and those piloted by Zivkor's rebel Zalthori faction. All ships report ready, said Captain Owen Kelly. Course to Zalthoria Prime is plotted. Samantha took a deep breath. This would be the final push, a direct assault on the Zalthori homeworld. 3 Nova Protocol devices were aboard her ship, but she prayed they wouldn't be needed. Send the message to all captains, she ordered. We depart in 1 hour. Commander Alan Reeves, now serving as Earth's chief diplomat, prepared for the most important meeting of his life. Alongside him stood Laura Mills and Zivkor. The Supreme. Council has agreed to meet with us, Zivkor said. But do not expect them to surrender easily. They still believe humans must be controlled, if not destroyed. Alan nodded. We don't want to destroy them. We just want peace on our terms. Their shuttle approached the massive space station where the meeting would take place. It was neutral ground, far from both Earth and Zalthoria Prime. One last chance, for diplomacy before the final battle. The Zalthori Supreme Council consisted of 7 members, 1 from each species in the Imperium. They sat across from the human delegation, their alien features impossible to read. "You have violated our territory," began the lead counselor, a tall figure with crystalline skin. "You have destroyed our military bases. You have turned our own people against us." "You started this war," Alan replied calmly. "You attacked us without provocation, based on predictions of what we might become centuries from now. Predictions that have proven accurate," the counselor responded. "In 3 years you have advanced more than many civilizations do in a millennium." Laura leaned forward. "Because you forced us to. We were peaceful explorers before your attack." "We offer terms for peace," Alan said, placing a data tablet on the table. "Withdrawal of all Zalthori forces from human territory. Recognition of Earth's sovereignty over 50 light-years in all directions from our sun. And a non-aggression pact lasting 1,000 years. The council members conferred among themselves in their whistling language. Finally, the lead counselor spoke. "We reject these terms. The Imperium does not negotiate with lesser species. Our remaining fleet will destroy your homeworld, even if it means our own destruction." As Alan's delegation returned to their shuttle, Laura discovered something alarming in the Zalthori communications she had been monitoring. "They never intended to negotiate," she told Alan. "While we were meeting, they launched their remaining ships toward Earth, a suicide attack." Alan immediately contacted Admiral Payne. "The diplomatic option has failed. The Zalthori have launched an attack fleet toward Earth." "Understood," Samantha replied. "The defense fleet is already moving to intercept." But there was more. As Laura continued decoding Zalthori messages, she found ancient records buried in their data streams, prophecies about a species called the Destroyers, who would rise from a blue world and bring chaos to the stars. "They've feared us for thousands of years," she told Alan. "Their oldest stories warned about humans specifically." While the massive fleets prepared for their final confrontation, Colonel Peter Wright led a special operations team on a mission that might end the war without further bloodshed. Using intelligence from Zivkor's faction, they infiltrated Zalthoria Prime, targeting the central defense network that protected the planet. "Remember," Peter told his team as they moved through the alien city, "we take out the defenses only. No civilian casualties." Sergeant Maria Garcia nodded. "The fleet needs 30 minutes to get into position. We need to disable the system by then." They reached the central command building, using access codes provided by their Zalthori allies. The few guards they encountered were quickly subdued with non-lethal weapons. "System located," Maria reported as they reached the main control room. "Initiating shutdown sequence." Above Zalthoria Prime, Admiral Payne's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. The planet below was beautiful, a world of purple oceans and emerald continents. "Zalthori defenses are down," reported Captain Kelly with surprise. "Wright's team succeeded." Samantha felt relief wash over her. Without their defense network, the Zalthori planet was vulnerable. But the orders from Earth Command were clear. "Use the Nova Protocol. Prepare the first device for deployment," she said reluctantly. "Admiral," Kelly protested, "there are billions of civilians down there. Most had nothing to do with the decision to attack Earth." Samantha stared at the planet below. The Zalthori had planned to exterminate humanity without mercy. Was this justice or vengeance? "Belay that order," she said finally. "Target military installations only. Precision strikes." The Earth fleet descended into Zalthoria Prime's atmosphere, disabling key military targets with pinpoint accuracy. Within hours, the Zalthori military surrendered. On Earth, news of the victory spread quickly. The war that had nearly ended humanity was over. They had not only survived but prevailed. In the aftermath, a new galactic accord was signed. The Zalthori Imperium was disbanded, replaced by a federation of independent worlds. Humans, once considered a minor species, now held positions of influence throughout the sector. 5 years after the war's end, Admiral Payne stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, a massive structure orbiting between Earth and Zalthoria, Prime. Beside her stood the former Grand General Kelvor, now a leading advocate for peace. "Your mercy was unexpected," Kelvor admitted. "We would not have shown the same." "That's why we won," Samantha replied. "We fought to survive, not to destroy." Below them, ships carrying colonists from both worlds departed toward distant stars. Ancient enemies now explored the galaxy together. Laura Mills, now the head of the Interspecies Cultural Exchange, joined them at the window. "The Zalthori have a new saying," she told Samantha. "The stars burn with our regret, but also with the light of new beginnings." Humanity had been tested by fire and emerged stronger than anyone, including themselves, could have imagined. The more species that had nearly been exterminated now helped guide the future of 100 worlds. And the stars, which had nearly witnessed humanity's end, now shone on their greatest beginning.